Previously, we went through the process of measuring, marking, trimming, and labeling barrier board for custom box enclosures. In this video, we'll move on to fabric trimming. The fabric you'll be using looks like this and is rough and sturdy. It comes in many colors, but it doesn't really matter what color you use. You can choose from scraps or cut a new piece from the large rolls of fabric available. To do this, simply remove the roll holders, unroll the amount of fabric you think you'll need, and use a pair of scissors to cut off the piece. Cut all the way across as cleanly as you can. If you have extra fabric left, you can always just add it to the scraps. You'll be cutting 4 fabric strips in total, the first 2 being the top and bottom strips. You'll be using basic math to calculate both sides of these strips. For one side, take the exact width of the book, times it by 2, and add 1.5 centimeters. Remember, if you need assistance with calculations, you can always ask for help. The other side of the top and bottom strips will be the thickness of the spine times 2. So, the top and bottom strips will be the modified width measurement by the modified thickness of the spine measurement. To summarize, the top and bottom fabric strips will be the exact width of the book times 2 plus 1.5 centimeters, and the other side will be the thickness of the spine times 2. I found 2 scrap pieces that are about the size I need. Flip the fabric to the lighter side before you mark, so you can see any pencil markings clearly. Now, mark the measurements you calculated. Oftentimes, scrap fabric will be uneven. Your fabric doesn't need to be perfectly straight, but if needed, you can always retrim the sides at the blade before you start marking. Sometimes, usually when you cut fabric straight from a roll, it will have a dark edging to it. You should cut this off either before you mark or while you are trimming, but do not include it in your measurements. Now place the fabric for trimming. Make sure any dark edging isn't on your final strips, and keep in mind that sometimes the blade doesn't always make a perfectly straight cut. Once again, it's okay if the sides aren't perfect, but make sure any unevenness isn't too profound. After trimming, the top and bottom strips should be the same size. The final 2 strips, I'm going to need the larger piece of fabric I cut off earlier. The strips I'll be measuring are the side fabric strips. For these, take the exact height of the book, then times it by 2 and add 1.5 centimeters. For the other side, like the previous fabric strips, take the thickness of the spine and times it by 2. So the side fabric strips will be the modified height measurement by the modified thickness of the spine measurement. To summarize, the long side of the side fabric strips are the exact height of the book times 2 plus 1.5 centimeters, while the shorter side is the thickness of the spine times 2. The top and bottom and side fabric strips are very similar, only the top and bottom use the width of the book, while these side strips use the height of the book. With a larger piece of fabric like this, it is easier to trim off excess fabric to better suit the size I'll need. Now, mark your measurements for the side strips. Notice that one side of the fabric is profoundly uneven. The way I'm measuring will allow for that side to be cut off by the blade while I'm trimming. This strip is also uneven, and also very long. While there are larger rulers available to use, if you prefer the shorter ruler, you can stack the measurement, or mark the end of the ruler and continue measuring from that mark. Now place them for trimming at the blade. After trimming, the side strips should be identical. In total, you should have 2 pairs of fabric strips, with the top and bottom pairs shorter than the side strips. Now, you will be matching and gluing barrier board pieces to the fabric strips. The pieces you'll be gluing for this step are the top and bottom barrier board strips and side strips A and B. The top and bottom barrier board strips will be glued to the shorter fabric strips, with side strips A and B being glued to the longer fabric strips. Glue is normally kept in the refrigerator to keep it fresh. There are also many glue brushes available to use. It's always a good idea to dampen whatever glue brush you pick before using it, and always have a partially dampened paper towel close by when you're gluing. Now gather the rest of your supplies and lay down a mylar strip on the surface you'll be gluing on. Also have a micro spatula handy for more precise glue jobs. You can begin with any pair. Start by flipping the piece of barrier board over to its dark side, which is the side you'll be coating in glue. Open your glue container, and you can test your glue by swirling it a bit. Take your glue brush and only dip the very tip of it into the glue. Do not use too much glue. You can always redip for more. Now coat one side of the barrier board. There isn't a specific technique for this, it's just best to use long, straight strokes, and ensure that the edges and corners are properly coated. Remember, you don't have to use much glue, and a thin coat is usually enough. Once you're done, set your glue brush carefully to the side and place the coated barrier board in the middle of its paired fabric strip. It doesn't have to be perfect, just estimate the center to your best ability. Use a bone folder to help the barrier board adhere to the fabric and properly spread the glue between them. Once you're done, set your glued pair aside to dry and move on to another pair. Now you'll repeat the same gluing process. Remember, only a thin coat of glue will do the trick, and always ensure the correct barrier board piece and fabric strip are glued together. When you are done gluing, you should have 4 glued sets. Find another mylar strip or multiple to lay on top of the sets in order to completely cover any glued areas. Find some weights, which are always laying around, and place them on top of the mylar where the glued areas are. This ensures that the barrier board and fabric are adhered to each other as they dry. These should be left to dry for at least 15 or 20 minutes, but overnight is recommended. Once dry, remove the weights and all the mylar strips, and gently test that the barrier board is glued to the fabric properly. Next, you will be making some more markings. Start with one of the sets and find one of the small guides for box making, which look like this and can be both transparent and opaque. Stand the guide up lengthwise on its thin side, up against the top edge and corner of the glued barrier board. Take a pencil and trace a line against the outer side of the guide. Move the guide to the other edge and corner of the barrier board and do the same thing. You will repeat this for every edge and corner of the barrier board. The gap between the pencil mark and the barrier board should be about 1 millimeter wide. You will make these marks on every glued set. Next, find a pair of scissors and cut some wedges only on side strips A and B, or the longer sets. To do this, cut a thin slice through the bottom edge of the fabric up until the pencil mark you made, with the point of the wedge aligning with the corner of the barrier board. Repeat this on the other side of the barrier board. These do not need to be precise, but remember to only create 2 of these wedges on the bottom edges of both side strips A and B. In total, you should have only made 4 wedges for the longer fabric strips. Next time, you'll be doing a lot of gluing. Please visit our Special Collections website for more information about our digital archives, services, or to contact our staff.